It's Tuesday, April 16. In the headlines, the Appropriations Amendment Bill is not expected to affect the 2024-2025 budget. In business news, Digicel announces new group CEO. Regionally, Grenada continues to lobby for the removal of Cuba from U.S. terrorism list. And in sports, JISA Western meet set for April 18. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The Senate passed a bill on Friday which seeks to remove some information published in the 2024-2025 estimates of expenditure. The Appropriations Amendment Bill adjusts a segment related to statutory expenditures that were inadvertently included in the schedule.
On pages 5 to 8 of the estimates of expenditure, so a big yellow book, you'll find a summary of the budget, of the provisions to be tabled. And there are 5 columns which run across the page beside the heads and numbers and titles of estimate that include statutory expenditure, gross expenditure to be voted, appropriations in aid, net expenditure to be voted, and net provisions in estimates, including statutory expenditures. And these are the 5 columns that you will see. And what occurred was that column 5 was picked up and put into the Appropriations Act in respect of the relevant heads instead of column 4.
The legislation was piloted by Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Kamina Johnson-Smith.
I am confident in stating that the reason we are here today is to ensure that a transcription error which occurred at the technical level within the Ministry of Finance, but which was, as soon as discovered, brought to the attention of the relevant directorate, which then initiated the process to ensure that we had the amendment bill, which was passed in the other place on Tuesday and then brought to us today, was addressed to ensure that there is no unconstitutionality and that there is no disruption of government operations.
Senator Johnson-Smith says the amendment to the Act does not affect the 2024-2025 central budget of $1.341 trillion.
The budget that has been presented by the government of Jamaica for the fiscal year is the budget that will be implemented. There is no change to the budget.
She furthers that the announced benefits related to PATH and Heart NSTA Trust programs will still be implemented. The leaders of a number of Jamaica's leading civil society groups are calling for some key actions from Jamaica's parliamentarians to improve the governance of the country. They're also voicing concern about some aspects of the recently concluded budget debate. The issues were highlighted at a recent media briefing dubbed Civil Society Organizations Post-Budget Debate Commentary, organized by the Advocates Network recently. The Advocates Network is an unincorporated, non-partisan alliance of individuals and organizations advocating for human rights and good governance. Among the issues discussed was the need for the Constitutional Reform Committee to provide information on its operations and for clarity.
To be effective in participating in these very, very important decisions, it's important that Jamaicans understand not only the significance of this process, but that they have a role in shaping a constitution for the first time in our history, in which what we want provides the foundation for this document that we call our constitution. We've never done that before.
They also expressed concern about measures highlighted in the budget to address biased gender social norms.
And so gender-responsive budgeting is not, as some may think, a 50-50 division of funds for the benefit of women and men, nor is it a separate budget for women and men. It is a process to assess from a gender perspective the government's budget to determine how the financial allocations will address the different needs of women, men, girls, and boys, as well as various groups of these populations. For example, health expenditures, which will meet needs of women and men in many areas and very differently. Both women have greater needs than men in areas of sexual and reproductive health, including addressing maternal mortality, which is on the increase in Jamaica.
A leading member of the network, director of the Institute of Law and Economics, Professor Rosalie Hamilton, says while there are positives such as the reduction of the debt-to-GDP ratio, Jamaicans must ask themselves if these are the correct indicators of growth and development.
We've heard about the macroeconomic fundamentals being correct, but that we have not seen that these strategies have lifted the living standards of the average Jamaican. In fact, today, the living standards in real terms is less than it was in 1972. And so, and when we compare ourselves to even the Caribbean, we see that we are not doing as well as we ought to, given the tremendous talent and resources that we have in this country.
Opposition Senator Damian Crawford highlighted the plight of Jamaican farmers as the country continues to battle with severe drought. Several communities in Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, Manchester and Trelawney have been most affected.
A simple example, 20,000 layer birds will consume over 2,000 gallons a day of water and will stop laying for 3 days if they don't get water one day.
No eggs?
No, for 3 days. For 3 days.
How many layers will consume?
20,000 will consume 2,000 gallons a day. So even when you have intermittent 3 days or 3 days on 3 days off, the farmer would then have to find both storage and access to 6,000 gallons.
He asked Government Senator Matthew Samuda to highlight the government's intervention to aid farmers to access and store water for their farms.
Water Resources Master Plan table at the end of last year, I think speaks to quite a bit of where well access is available and where likely to be granted. So I'd encourage anyone who is a holder of land looking at agricultural investment to look at that plan. We'd also bring your attention to the rainwater harvesting guidelines for planning that were tabled also at the same time towards the end of last year, because that also speaks to how rainwater harvesting should be used in agriculture and how to do it properly.
He says the government is particularly concerned about the drought impact on the nation's farmers. Meanwhile, the Jamaica Agricultural Society says the government may have to consider importing some crops if farms continue to be affected by drought. The Ministry of Education and Youth has been using the annual National Mathematics Week activities to shine the spotlight on the teaching and learning of mathematics, and this year there was no difference. Delivering an address to students and teachers gathered for the Mathematics Teacher of the Year and Jamaican Mathematical Olympiad Awards ceremonies, State Minister Marcia Smith spoke on the importance of the subject. Danita Rodney tells us more.
Representing the Education Minister, State Minister in the Ministry, Marcia Smith, said that despite its importance, there has been reports of poor performance both locally and across the region.
Yet, despite mathematics being an important subject, poor and underperformance has been reported in many countries, including our own. A report, Mathematics Education in Latin America and the Caribbean, published by the International Council for Science in 2010, noted that all over the world there is growing concern about mathematics and science education. From the evidence gathered during the last years, it is clear that we are not doing this task properly, and that means a big problem for all Latin American and Caribbean countries.
In her remarks, Ms. Smith said that mathematical knowledge is necessary in a range of life skills in order for adults to function.
We must all, therefore, recognize that for adults to function reasonably well in an increasingly complex world, they require a basic level of numeracy. numeracy, or mathematical knowledge is necessary in a range of life skills, such as personal finance and the handling of data.
She continued saying that students shy away from the subject due to bad experiences and that needs to change.
Yet we must also acknowledge that there is an urgency to be addressed nationally. First, we have to get it right at the foundation levels. Many students shy away from applying themselves to mathematics because of bad early experiences. Perhaps it was a stern-faced teacher who intimidated them when they did not get the arithmetic right at the first go. Who knows? Perhaps they were not introduced to concepts to which they relate, and they progress through the system with increasing levels of difficulty and challenge. They found no fun doing the subject. We have to change these perspectives.
National Mathematics Week 2024 is being observed from April 14 to 19 under the theme Adding Up the Excitement, Math Rocks. Reporting for the news on PBCJ, I'm Danita Rodney.
Dengue fever is spreading to places it did not exist before. That's what the World Health Organization is reporting based on its data. You should know that dengue, break-bone fever, is a viral infection that spreads from mosquitoes to people. It is more common in tropical and subtropical climates. Here's more in this Living Healthy report.
Why is dengue fever back in news again? Why are we seeing it in areas where it did not exist before? And what about treatment? What about vaccination? Here to talk about all of this is Dr. Raman Velayudan. Welcome, Raman. Talk to us about dengue fever. What causes it and how does it spread?
Dengue fever is a virus fever caused by the bite of Aedes mosquito. In majority of the cases, these are mild symptoms with body pain, headache, and rashes, which last for a few weeks. However, about 5% of the cases are severe, where the patient needs hospital care. The main symptoms of severe dengue are vomiting, bleeding of the gums, plasma leakage, and sometimes organ failures. These cases need to be managed in the hospital to prevent death. However, most of the patients recover from it, but delay in admission can cause unnecessary fatalities. So in many cases, the patient takes time to come, and that delay is a crucial point. Dengue is transmitted from one person to the other by the bite of the mosquito.
You know, when I was growing up in New Delhi, I never heard about dengue until a certain point, and then dengue cases started appearing. We're seeing it in places where it did not exist before, like Spain or Bhutan. Why is this happening?
Well, dengue is spread very fast, mainly because of international travel and the adaptation of the mosquito into an urban pocket. Climate change is yet another factor which has contributed to the spread of dengue, and this has two extremes where the flooding of areas also causes mosquitoes to multiply, but at the same time, if there is scarcity of water, the mosquitoes manage to survive in containers of stored water. So the more water you store, the more areas for it to breed. So this has all helped the mosquito to adapt and spread the disease to newer areas and new countries. Over 100 countries are endemic for this disease, and approximately 4 billion people are at risk of it. The mosquito has adapted so well that it is continuing to spread to newer areas where the climatic conditions are suitable.
Are there any treatments or vaccine? Does that work for dengue fever?
There are currently no treatment for dengue. Most of the cases are managed at home, mainly to prevent the main symptoms of dengue, which are fever or your joint pains. So tablets are given for controlling that. Paracetamol is given as the medicine for this, while ibuprofen and aspirin are discouraged since that can lead to bleeding. Currently, there is only one vaccine which is approved, and that is recommended for age group between 6 to 16 in high transmission setting. There are several new developments which includes better diagnostic kits, medicines, and mosquito control tools. They will be made available as their studies and results are published. Currently, there are no other effective methods which are in use, but we are using traditional methods to control the mosquitoes.
Raman, talk to us about why dengue fever is so hard to control and how can we protect ourselves?
The dengue fever is hard to control because this mosquito has adapted extremely well to urban centers. Secondly, their eggs can remain dry for several months and hatch as soon as they come in contact with water. Thirdly, this mosquito is continuing to spread to newer areas where conditions are favorable to them, and this includes urban and semi-urban pockets. The dengue mosquito bites during the daytime. Hence, we have to protect ourselves with repellents and other personal protection measures.
Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Business Report. I'm Denise Williams, your guide through the latest happenings in the world of business. Digicel announced Marcelo Catalò as its new group CEO effective May 1. Originally from Paraguay, Marcelo has diverse international experience, having worked across Latin America, the US, and Europe. He joins Digicel from Tigo, Colombia, where he has served as CEO and president since August 2016. Under his watch, Tigo delivered communication services to 16 million customers in Colombia and is on a strong growth trajectory with its post-paid base up by 21% and its corporate digital services up by almost 35% last year. Jamaica's Best Dressed Chicken has expanded into the Trinidad and Tobago market through an alliance with local conglomerate group Hadco. Hadco, which has diversified operations in the manufacturing, importation, and distribution sectors in the Twin Island Caribbean Republic, has added the Jamaican poultry brand to its food and beverage distribution range. Ava Sinclair, Regional Marketing Manager for Best Dressed Chicken, commented on the brand's foray into Trinidad and Tobago in a news release saying, "The significance of building strong connections among the Caribbean islands and introducing the essence of Jamaican cuisine is intrinsic to our operations and values as a company, and also absolutely necessary to this region's sustainability and competitiveness." Both Strawberry Hill Hotel in St. Andrew and the Caves Hotel in Negril are up for sale. Both properties are owned by producer and founder of Island Records, Chris Blackwell. The price tag for the Caves, located in Negril's famed West End, has been listed with a sale price of US $18.9 million. The Caves Hotel covers 13 acres and was the backdrop for the 1965 James Bond film, Thunderball. During trading on April 15, 2024, the top three advancing stocks covered the technology, distribution, and healthcare sectors on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Productive Business Solutions, 9.75%, cumulative redeemable shares advanced 18.66% for an $18.63 price increase to close at $118.45 with 8 shares traded. Paramount Trading Jamaica Limited shares advanced by 13.49% for a 17-cent price jump to close at $1.43 with 9,103 shares traded. G West Corporation Limited shares advanced by 11.39% for a 10-cent price bump to close at 98 cents with 1,552 shares traded. On the declining stocks, the traders experienced on April 15, 2024, The top 3 losers covered the media, food, and entertainment sectors. The Limners and Bards Limited declined by 15.2% for a 26-cent price drop to close at $1.45 with 44,863 shares traded. Express Catering Limited declined by 11.36% for a 50-cent drop in price to close at $3.90 with 29,969 shares traded. KLE Group Limited declined by 7.92% for a 19-cent slide in price to close at $2.21 with 10 shares traded. Over on the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange trading, on April 15, 2024, it registered a volume of 176,997 shares crossing the floor of the exchange, valued at $1,850,701 Trinidad and Tobago dollars and 59 cents. National Enterprises Limited was a volume leader with 57,673 shares, changing hands for a value of 219,206 Trinidad and Tobago dollars and 50 cents, followed by Trinidad Cement Limited with a volume of 20,000 shares being traded for 54,200 Trinidad and Tobago dollars and 40 cents. Moving from the money moves of investors, executives, and companies, we turn to the Forex market. On April 15, 2024, the Bank of Jamaica reported that US $61.18 million was bought from Forex traders, while US $59.53 million was sold to Forex traders. Buying directly from the Bank of Jamaica, foreign currency traders sold the US dollar for $156.23 and bought the US dollar for $154.46. The difference between the buy and sell rate was $1.77, which represents a profit for Forex traders for every US dollar traded. Canadian Forex traders earned a trading profit of $3.24 from transactions with the Bank of Jamaica. The Canadian dollar was sold at $114.92 and bought for $111.68. For traders looking at the British pound, they pocketed a profit of $3.72, selling it for $193.52 and buying it for $189.80. For our credit report tip of the day, it is important to have different types of credit options so you can reach your goals. In order to determine which type of credit option is right for you, schedule a chat with your banker. So let's talk about how to prep for your meeting. Well, first thing, you're going to gather any papers you have about your credit, like your credit report. Write down any questions you have for your banker. Think about why you want to improve your credit and what you hope to achieve. And with that, we wrap up today's business report. I'm Denise Williams. Appreciate your company. Stay well informed, stay ahead of the curve. Until our next update, take care.
In regional news, Grenada continues to advocate for Cuba to be removed from the U.S. terrorism sponsors list. More from GBN News.
Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell is urging the United States to remove Cuba from its list of nations designated as terrorism sponsors and to end the economic blockade imposed on the Spanish-speaking country. Addressing reporters at the Morris Bishop International Airport upon his return from an official visit to Cuba on Sunday, Prime Minister Mitchell emphasized the unjust nature of Cuba enduring 60 years under economic siege.
Re-emphasize that the people of Cuba have been under an unjust economic blockade for the last 6 decades.
The Prime Minister explained how, despite the hardship of being embargoed, Cuba remained resilient in its engagements with countries like Grenada, extending assistance beyond its borders.
And despite that, they have not closed themselves off from the world. They have not only looked internally, but they continue to share, they continue to help. We experienced this during COVID-19. There are significant Cuban collaborators in Grenada still working and supporting the people of Grenada. And so we owe it to the Cuban people to stand in solidarity with them and to continue to call for the removal of the economic blockade against the people of Cuba and the removal of Cuba from list of countries that sponsor terrorism.
He emphasized the detrimental impact of the blockade, preventing millions from experiencing Cuba's cultural richness and learning from its valuable insights.
By continuing to do so, the United States is preventing millions of ordinary men and women from around the world in visiting and experiencing the wonder that is Cuba. Because Cuba certainly has a lot to teach the world, a lot to share with the world. And the continued blockade, the continued wrongful listing of Cuba as a state that sponsors terrorism is actually preventing Cuba from giving more of itself to the world.
Prime Minister Mitchell was accompanied by a delegation which included Ministers Joseph Handel, David Andrew, Lennox Andrews, and Philip Telesford. Reporting for GBN News, Beverly Telesford.
In Barbados, the public and private sectors may work together to take the economy to higher heights. That's a word from Minister in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment, Chad Blackman. He is insisting Barbados must not retreat from its challenges, since the price of failure is too big a burden for the country to bear. Wendy Burke reports.
Minister in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment, Chad Blackman, is suggesting that there are several strategies that must be pursued to remove existing blockages hindering economic growth. Speaking at a high-level meeting on corporation tax reform, Pillar 2, at the Lloyd Erskine Sandyford Center, Minister Blackman stressed that the creation of Business Barbados is critical to give investors access to an entity mandated to ensure that their business transactions are as seamless as possible. Furthermore, Minister Blackman is suggesting that Barbados must look closely at addressing its demographic challenges by population and skills management.
In my previous role at the ILO, only a few months ago, I can tell you one of the major challenges in one of the reports that came out was that most of the skills required and jobs that will be in the world within the next 10 years, not 20 or 30, but 10 years, we as a global community don't have the skills today. And therefore, it has to now be a repositioning of our educational system, our governance system, our skills management processes in the country, not just Barbados, but the region, to ensure that we can be competitive.
According to Minister Blackman, reviewing and modernizing the country's tax system is also necessary, in addition to unlocking the mortgage market, renewable energy investments, and increasing access to financing in the public and private sectors.
Monetization of liquid and derelict assets in the public and private sectors is going to be key. Exporting capital to diversify investments, given Barbados' limited size and vulnerability, starting, of course, with the CARICOM single market and economy, and the wider Caribbean, and Central, and Latin America basin. Establishing the pharmaceutical industry to aid in the protection of citizens' health, as well as to export the earning of foreign exchange. Also, the developing of Barbados as an agro-processing hub. Our geographic location allows us to have a strategic advantage in that regard, and therefore the government is working with the private sector in building that out.
The whole-day information session covered a number of matters related to the OECD G20 two-pillar solution implementation, Barbados' corporate tax reform, and matters of tax transparency, including the crypto asset reporting framework and the Common Reporting Standard 2.0.
In sports, we're out the blocks with athletics, as more than 25 schools have submitted entries to compete in the Jamaica Independent School Association JISA Western Track and Field Meet. The meet is set for Thursday, April 18 at the Herbert Morrison Technical High School. Speaking at a press conference to kick off the event last Friday at the St. James Municipal Corporation's chambers, Mackenzie said the JISA Western Track Meet started at the Montego Bay Sports Complex 12 years ago, but COVID pandemic forced organizers to postpone it until this year. And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. And do remember, we are the People's Station.